specific enough. If the minister do as you had alleged, this is considered an honor of the house. Just like a code of law. When I finally became a lawyer, I was told that the word of a lawyer at the bar table has the weight of an affidavit. If a minister is saying that he did not do as said, I will accept it if it can be. Who is also a member is saying that what was reported is not accurate unless we have some proof at hand. Accept the explanation and then
Mr. Speaker, in the interest of going forward, I will withdraw works and I'll say Minister of the Government. Yes, it's a reflection.
I did just say that I was the minister who was referred to in this controversy.
not by Mr. Trotman.
By Mr. Trump. No,
But I can only deal with what Mr. Trotman said this afternoon. What happens on the outside?
I did on this floor state here that I was the minister referred to in this controversy. I stood after the honorable member, Mr. Trotman, and I did state that I did not walk into NCN as the honorable member alleged and make any demands or give any instructions with request to any playing of any material on the NCN. I did say that. And I'm asking, therefore, that is so on.
The honorable member, as I stated, if in fact, Mr. Ben, as Minister of Works, was sufficiently identified by a statement with or without the removal of the word works, it identifies him and it can still refer to him, I will uphold the point of order now and direct that that file be removed from the record that makes reference to a minister, whether of works or whatever. He's clearly identifiable, and if he has stated in the absence of any proof that he is not being truthful, I will uphold the point of order. And it is removed from the record. Go ahead, Mr.
This is a reflection of the outrageously partisan nature of the state-owned media. But in a more general sense, there is clear need for a ministerial code of conduct. What is also required is a sharpened awareness of ministerial responsibility, as evidenced, for example, by the uncaring reaction to the tragic shootings of peaceful demonstrations in Georgetown and Linden. Finally, government needs a complete revamping of its governance framework. Power needs to be decentralized at both the central and local government levels. At the central level, the 1980 Constitution needs further amendment, including diminution of the powers of the House of President. In addition, critical institutions are required to be established or strengthened in order to provide much needed checks and balances. At the government level, there is need for strengthened and extensive reform, including a diminution of the powers of the local government minister, and a strengthening of regional and municipal powers vis-a-vis those of the central government. And the risk of minority executive government facilitates a structural change, or will it continue to stymie constitutional progress? Above all, the plural society that is Guyana requires a new paradigm of political cooperation and an attitudinal transformation, particularly on the part of those who have been in office for the last 21 years and who deserve a failing grade of F as far as good governance is concerned. Mr. Speaker, on corruption, on the matter of corruption, I want to say this. When I listened to the junior finance minister speak to government's proposals to address the question of corruption, I wondered which planet he came from. It is clear to me that he does not understand when you are part of the problem you cannot be part of the solution. I got the impression that he has promised a miracle to resolve this tremendous crisis. It seems as if he has not learned his lesson. He ought to know since November 20th, 2011, when he promised the PPPC that with Jesus' assistance, he will deliver beyond to them and fail, that he is incapable of delivering miracles.
I remember, it was quite a notorious statement, and that will not be accurate.
Exactly.
And so if we were to make a reference, let us be accurate. I think what the minister publicly said is that if Jesus was in Galilee, we go to him. That was what was said. Let us not, if you want to quote or make a reference, let us be accurate.
Mr. Speaker, may I say that when I listened to him, I got that he was informing that Jesus will be, and that is my reference.
That is a inference that you may draw.
Yes.
And so you may put it that way.
Yes.
Mr. Speaker, corruption is institutionalized in this society, and the establishment of an internal audit department and conducting workshops with stakeholders will not allow for its eradication. The way to go is for the government to start by stopping the attempts to deceive people about the way forward. They must put in place the much needed procurement commission to oversee the award of contracts, establish the National Assembly Budget Office to oversee how appropriations are being dealt with, and consult with genuine patriots on the other mechanisms that are required to deal with the problems and implement the proposals in here. Mr. Speaker, as is normally the case, the reliefs which have been identified will benefit those who already live in great comfort and place the disadvantaged in an even more disadvantageous position. It is worth noting that among the proposals for improving the living standards of the poor and the powerless, from the majority side of the House, are recommendations for reduction of the VAT and increasing old age benefits to $15,000 per month. These have been ignored, while benefits to cronies and friends have been increased. For example, the reduction of the property tax will mostly benefit the property class. Mr. Speaker, I know that the minister spent a lot of time talking about poverty alleviation. And I wonder if the $1.1 billion appropriation for the Ministry of Education school feeding program for school children come the cost of providing to those children the course whose parents are unable to provide a meal at lunchtime, as was recommended by the APA to buy a meal a few months ago. Let me remind this House that I had brought to the attention of the National Assembly and the Acting Minister of Education, the Honorable Dr. Frank Anthony, a situation which indicated that a large number of young male and female students on the coast are without meals at lunchtime and are forced to beg, and in some cases steal, to satisfy their hunger. As a result, they are exposed to the demands for sex by some so-called benefactors. I had requested that a pilot study be undertaken in Georgetown to ascertain the validity of the concerns I expressed. The acting minister pointed to the medical business distribution as government's attempt to address the problem, and had requested that I provide details of this incident so he could check. But I told him the best source of information is the recommended pilot study. My question at this time is, has a pilot study been undertaken? If not, why not? Let me make the point.
Before you want to make the point, the time has elapsed. There has to be an application.
I move that the member be given 5 minutes to question.
Thank you.
Let me make the point that while the milk and biscuits distribution provides some form of relief, it is not given to each child and is not a substitute for a hot meal at lunchtime. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, how many ministers in this House will allow their children to consume a meal of milk and biscuits every day? Mr. Speaker, This matter should be of great concern to the ministry, and steps should already have been taken to address the problem. We cannot pretend to be concerned about the plight of young people, and when information is provided which underscores the depths of depravity in the society, we pass above the others. We talk about the high rate of pregnancy in schools, and then we refuse to identify with a situation which points to one of the reasons why pregnancy among our female students and burglary of our young male students is as high as it is in the school system. I believe, sir, that the majority in this House will really support an appropriation which is intended to address the problems of providing a hot meal at lunchtime to each needy child throughout the school system.
Cannot stand here and defend himself. And about him because no evidence has been delinquent. There's been no finding delinquency.
Motion of no confidence.
I believe that the no confidence motion was passed by a majority of the council representatives.
Yes.
Mentioned here. And that is a notorious fact. Whether or not action has been taken, I think is a different matter. But something is the opinion of the majority of councils that they have lost confidence in this particular office. But Mr. Cropper, to make a statement of delinquency without being able to support it, I would, anyone can come and say anything
Mr. Speaker, my support for the statement lies in the fact that the motion was moved and passed, and the minister was written. The minister was asking the motion, and he has done nothing.
Well, in that case, Mr. Cropper, who would be delinquent? Not Mr. Harrison. If there's been a demand on the minister to act, and there, for whatever reason, you can't then target. No, one second, Mr. Just waiting. We haven't, we got a there has been a demand made on the minister, and those actions have not, we're not assuming here, have not been from court. But then, if it is in that context, you can't accuse Mr. Harris of being delinquent. That's the point I make.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Harrisabach has been delinquent in relation. And what flowed from that was the no confidence motion. And the minister is delinquent.
What I would say, one second, Mr. Minister, what I would say is that until such time as we have the actual document before us setting out what transgressions, if any, they were, I would not allow you to say that he has been delinquent this year too. Because we don't know the basis of, and it is not a subject matter in this house for us to just say that he was a therefore. I know that it was, but truthfully, I haven't been able to see the motion, I haven't been able to see the resolve clause. It's not in the body of this house, and therefore, we cannot say that the man is delinquent. You know that a motion was passed.
So we take judicial notice, sir.
Well, we have to take judicial notice of something that is before us. I know that something is done, but that's most I would allow you to say. That a motion of no confidence was passed against him, but not to go and describe him as being delinquent or otherwise.
Mr. Speaker, will it help if I lay over the documents in this house?
Anybody else? But you have about 2 minutes and a half left in your presentation. So far, Mr. Prasad, because you are dealing with a point of order, I do not see the need for you to rise for anything. Thank you.
In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, I want to say two things. First, some home truths.
I only hope
Guyanese are surviving not because of the so-called stable economic environment, but because of their wits combined with remittance flows, fortuitous foreign investments related to the high commodity prices and illicit proceeds from the drop trade. Guyanese are surviving in gold mining activities in the forbidden interior terrain, not because of government provision of access roads and other infrastructure, but because of favorable international prices. Guyanese are surviving not because of government provision of basic needs, but in spite of wasteful, corrupt, and distorted government expenditure, including notable white elephants. Guyanese are barely surviving in the hotel industry, not with the help of any government subsidies, but with the threat of government's myriad finances drugging them out of the industry. This government is one to take credit for certain recent economic developments, but the truth is that the government is more of a hindrance than a help. It is a product of the above-mentioned various economic actors that contribute to macroeconomic stability and not the much vaunted government policy intervention. What we currently have in Guyana can be characterized as a case of public failure and private success. Secondly, I want to use this opportunity to bring to your attention a saying which goes like this, Mr. Speaker. Might is right until right gets ready. I want to repeat it. Might is right until right gets ready. What we must is the way in which governments use and abuse power and the people's eventual response, which is inevitably vicious. Many governments, including this PDPC government, have a way of believing that because it controls the military apparatus of the state, they can and do use brutal measures to coerce citizens to obedience of their dictates. That only works for a while. History is replete with instances where the people, even after years of tyrannical behavior from ruling parties, have risen up and thrown out the yokes of tyranny in Guyana. In Guyana, the situation is not dissimilar. The crisis which is partly reflected in this budget requires an urgent solution. In this crisis, we have been presented with a wonderful opportunity not only to reflect on where we are, but to determine where we are going. Mr. Speaker, let us, even at this late hour, craft the kind of budget which will take Guyana beyond where it is. The consequences for this question, if this cannot be done, are too grave to consider. The people are waiting to hear from us. Thank you.
Yes.
I did not want to interrupt your honorable member.
Clarification or something?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, the honorable members on record say, quote, people out there see the PDP as a criminal cabal to be dismantled. People out there see the PDP as a criminal cabal to be dismantled. Mr. Speaker, the members on my side of this one, I see a number of honorable members who are members of the People's Progressive Party. By invitation, these honorable members are members of the criminal cabal. They're involved in criminality, they've committed some crime, and therefore are dishonorable according to what the members say. I would wish, Mr. Speaker, to have this description of the People's Progressive Party, the criminal cabal, expunged from the record, or the members of the Parliament to withdraw these remarks.
We call that the Edward, right?
Honorable members, the member was saying what people, reported what people say. He didn't say what he felt. I recall when, not so long, our Prime Minister gave a very strong statement in this House following the events at the Brickyard, and they were allowed.
Yes.
They were allowed because members were I wouldn't say accused, but certainly not even the connotation, but it was suggested. What I will allow into the record is a clarification that because the members to him, but what I will allow into the record is that a clarification was made, and I accept that who are associated with that party, and they do not in any way see that party as being criminal enterprise. But I believe that the clarification is allowed, and I will permit it to go in. But the statement was just the case this afternoon
This is a serious charge. This is a serious charge. And every honorable member has the information at the disposal of the members in the DPP who are part of the criminal command. I will encourage you to share this information, or I will encourage the police to the information.
Not even police will visit your mind.
You are advised to forward any information you may have. I will give you I invite all of you, the honorable
I wish to extend congratulations to Dr. Ashley Singh and his diligent and competent staff for a job that is well done. Mr. Speaker, we have heard a lot of things about this budget, but any dispassionate examination of this budget would lead to the ineluctable conclusion that this budget, in its focus and allocation, targets almost every conceivable interest group in our population and alters in a material way their financial, economic, and social status and well-being for the better. These groupings, Mr. Speaker, include but are not limited to our farmers, our public sector employees, our private sector employees, our private sector employers, our sugar workers, our professionals, our children, our students, our business sector, both small and large, our single mothers, our pensioners, our Amerindians, all have been touched in some material way by budgetary allocations contained in Budget 2013. Mr. Speaker, this budget therefore touches the life of every single Guyanese, and fundamentally, the Guyanese people have recognized that. They have recognized that. Someone made reference to the fact that we should go on the street and listen to the people. Well, I want to say that we have done that, and the people have given us their full endorsement, both individually and through their organizations. Mr. Speaker, one only has to read the newspaper, and you will see the private endorsing the budget, the Georgetown Chamber of Commerce endorsing the budget, the labor movement FICA endorsing the budget. One has to look at the stakeholders meeting which the President entertained. At that meeting, Mr. Speaker, every conceivable organization was present, and they gave their emphatic and full endorsement to Budget 2013. Indeed, and in fact, the only people I know in Guyana who do not support this budget is the 33 on this side. Your support, you know, that is the it will not be the majority for long. That's what's important. Mr. Speaker, it is not my intention to recite all the benefits and other facets of Budget 2013. My colleagues have done that with admirable clarity and in commendable detail. I wish, however, to express some views about the intention stated by the opposition, both parties, to cut the budget.
Honourable Minister, before you do, just by way of a personal explanation, perhaps an apology, there was a young lady here in an dress that matches your tie. And I don't know if there's any way she was
Could the young lady stand? Let me see.
I think she was asked to leave. not to leave, but brought to her attention. But if in any way, I'm not really like.
I think there was any correlation.
I apologize.
This is just to represent the prosperity in the mining industry. But sir, may I use the facts all the time on my leg and whatever privilege that brings me to invite the young lady to come back?
Yes, it's a gift.
Thank you very much, sir. And the time, sir, I would like to kind of reduce. How's that sound? Mr. Speaker, if I may resume, thank you. Mr. Speaker, the opposition in this House regrettably have expressed the intention, even prior to the presentation of the budget, and of course subsequent to the presentation of the budget, they have expressed the unfortunate intention to cut Budget 2030. And I've looked very carefully and I've listened very carefully in the way that the desire was expressed. And I get the impression, Mr. Speaker, that by cutting the budget, my friends on the other side feel that they are somehow hurting the government. And I want to say to them that if they intend to cut the budget to hurt the government, that is not what they are doing. They are hurting the Guyanese people when they cut the budget. They are putting us in a state of they cut the budget. It's not about the government. Mr. Speaker, I listened. I am aware of all the machinations that are going on in the background so that numbers can be made right here, so that that budget cut can be effective. So determined are my people to cut the welfare of the Guyanese people that they are engaged in all forms of machinery. I listened to a television program 2 weeks ago featuring my friend Mr. Greenidge, the Honorable Member Mr. Ramjatan, and the Honorable Member Mr. Moses Dagamutu. Master team. Yes. Distinguished Honorable gentlemen. And they were sitting on the television and they were speaking about Budget 2013. And they were speaking about what they will do with Budget 2013. How they will cut it. And Mr. Speaker, I was listening with rapt attention because so engrossed were these members. I could see the excitement in their eyes as they were discussing the instruments that they will use. Mr. Ramjatan spoke very passionately about the size of his instrument. He said the bigger the budget, the bigger. Their political orgasm, they will break the interest of the Guyanese people. They will mess up the life of the
I'm directly opposite him. I'm afraid, Mr. Speaker. I'm directly opposite him.
The Guyanese people understand the imagery and they understand what the opposition is doing with their budget. They understand the imagery. Mr. Speaker, they have identified projects that they are going to cut. They have said that they are going to cut the budgetary allocations to the Amila Falls project. Mr. Speaker, why is it are the Guyanese people in the year 2013 not entitled to a reliable and cheap and renewable source of electricity in the year 2013. The government, their government want to give it to them, but the opposition wants to deny them of electricity. Another project that they have identified is the new specialty hospital. In the year 2013, are the Guyanese people not entitled to the best health care in the world? Their government is prepared to give it to them, and the opposition is prepared to take it away from them. Another project identified is the Chedijagan International Airport. Are the Guyanese not entitled in the year 2013 to a modern airport? Their government wants to give them, but the opposition wants to deny them. Mr. Speaker, what wrong has the Guyanese people done? What sins have they committed not to be entitled to facilities that are available to people all over the world? That is the question. What is it that the Guyanese people have done? What wrong have they done? What sin have they committed to be denied of these basic facilities to people everywhere? My grandmother, you would say, Mr. Speaker, or as Mr. Ruhi would say, go by them. What is wrong? Why the Guyanese people must not get these facilities? Mr. Speaker, there is also another side to the cuts proposed. There is a legal side. Mr. Speaker, this House is the premier lawmaking institution of the land. This House, therefore, has a responsibility to ensure that the Constitution of the country and the laws of the land are obeyed. This House cannot take a position that is contrary to the Constitution and contrary to the law. Justice Chang, in a 34-page ruling, outlined why the opposition has no project. Justice Chang said so. And Mr. Speaker, if the Parliament is going to take a position that they are not going to obey the laws of the land and they are not going to obey orders of court, well, they do so at their own peril. They do so at their own peril. Mr. Speaker,
What are you going to have to do?
yeah, well, you see, my friend is saying, what do I intend? I don't want to do anything. Let the people see. Let the people see that you are telling the court instruments. That is what the people will see. Mr. Speaker, there is an article. Forget what I say or what Chief Justice Chang said. There is an article written.
What did the judgment say? Let's have it.
There is an article written by. There's an article written in the Kaichur News by, and the Kaichur News, sir, as you know, never a friend of the government. And Mr. Ramjitan is the legal advisor to the Kaichur News. And this is what the article's title is. AFC bark is not matched by its bite at the moment. Published on the 26th of March 2013. by an author, Peeping Tom.
The legal opinion or?
Not a legal opinion. But it is my view, and I incorporate it into my address. This is what the writer says. The courts have held that the opposition cannot cut the budget. They can only approve or not approve. While this is just a preliminary ruling, it must be borne in mind that rulings of a court must be complied with until such time as they are overturned or reversed. Society will descend into anarchy if bodies of persons decide not to comply with rulings of the court, regardless of how they may feel about a specific judgment. Has indeed, using the language of the Honorable Minister of Finance, embarked upon a veritable plethora of constitutional actions which have brought them in collision with the Constitution of this country. And Mr. Speaker, they forced us to go to court on many occasions. And they passed motions. Let us deal with the motion. The first set of motions, budget, and we went to the court. And what did the court rule? Cutting of the budget was unconstitutional. The second motion that they moved, or another motion that they moved, was to gag Minister Rohi from speaking in the Parliament. And Mr. Speaker, they persuaded to fall into error and to impose a gag. And sir, the court ruled that the gag imposed on Minister Rohi was unlawful. And Your Honor ruled that the gag imposed on Minister Rohi was unlawful. Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Speaker, it's the same thing we maintain. The Lord Attorney General distorts the rules.
No, with respect.
On the point of...
One second, Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Mr. Nandal is giving his interpretation of the court's order. You have yours. So, at the order comes in
the only problem is that Mr. Williams is in solitude in his interpretation. But that aside, then my friend Mr. Trotman took the Attorney General to court to deal with the Lotto Funds matter. Another issue that Mr. Greenidge spoke about. And the judge threw out the case on a preliminary court. The judge threw out the case. Well, sir, if they cannot get the preliminary points correct, how can they get the substance correct? So, sir, we now come to Mr. Greenidge's favorite Article 222A of the Constitution. Mr. Greenidge is arguing, and he has a bill to that effect pending in the House, that the budget is presented in the wrong format. His argument, as I apprehend him, is that the items listed in Budget 222A, namely the Judiciary, the Rights Commission, and the Auditor General Office, they should prepare and present their own budget, and they, in relation to the others excluding the Auditor General, they should prepare and send their budget to the Clerk of the National Assembly, who should present it to this Parliament. And in relation to the Auditor General, that they should prepare their budget and send it to the Public Accounts Committee, where, on this instance, Mr. Greenidge is the chair, and that he will present the budget. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that if my friend can stand and cite a single location on planet Earth where such a position obtained, I take my seat easily.
Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, the presentation to which the distinguished Attorney General is making reference
had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the process by which, from the individual entities he named, Auditor General and so, reach the Parliament. Article 222A does not specify that process. That process is, it has nothing to do with interpretation. That process is the subject of the Amendment Act. But the Constitution, by way of Article 222A, requires that the Minister of Finance treat the agencies that he mentions in exactly the same way as they treat the ERC.
That's right.
And in the budget, in the estimates as of now, they are treated differently, illegally so. That's the point. So don't misrepresent what he said. I never directed my attention to the process.
Mr. Speaker, Mr.
The process is the subject of a bill. The legality of whether or not a lump sum payment is reflected in the estimates is the matter before us. That is what 222A is about.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Greenidge, in his presentation, cited and accused the government of a number of things throughout the year that and there are bills and that we are not obeying. Among the irregularities that he has identified, that is one. I am not dealing with that. I am dealing with a second set of course it is in the House still pending. And then there was a constitutional amendment, sir. It was a complex amendment as well as an amendment to the FMFAA. So I am dealing with that. So, sir.
One second. So,
easy to talk a little.
the Honorable Attorney General, you are saying that you are responding to statements made by Mr. Greenidge.
Yes, sir.
He said no.
Mr. Greenidge is saying that he never said what you
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Greenidge made a speech in this House in which he accused the government of a litany of unconstitutionality. What is, I don't have to walk with Mr. Greenidge's speech. I made notes, sir. I made my notes. Contemporary. And my word must have some weight, sir. You pointed out to that.
I want you to make the argument for me. That's right. If I want you to make the argument.
Thank you very much, sir. So, sir, the arguments advanced by Mr. Greenidge are completely without merit. What Mr. Greenidge wants us to do, what Mr. Greenidge, sir, you see, the Constitution distributes power, and we know it, by doctrine of separation of power. Powers of government into three categories: the legislature, the executive, and the judicial. Among those powers distributed to the executive is the financial responsibility of the state. Among those financial responsibilities, sir, is the functional responsibility and obligation of presenting and preparing the national estimates of Guyana. Sir, the Constitution, Article 218, says exactly that. Article 218 says, and I quote, "The minister responsible for finance or any other minister designated by the president shall cause to be prepared, shall cause and laid before the National Assembly. He shall prepare the National Assembly within 90 days after the commencement of each financial year, estimates of revenue and expenditure of Guyana for that year." Crystal clear. It doesn't say that you can take it and give it to the clerk, or you can take it yourself. That is what the Constitution says, sir. And sir, what Mr. Greenidge is asking us to do, is not an ordinary constitutional breach. He's violating the separation of powers doctrine, foundational constitutional principles, because he's shifting power from the executive to the legislature, and he's shifting power to himself. And he is violating the Constitution. These are not ordinary violations. Mr. Speaker, these are constitutional vulgarities of obscene proportion.
The member has made to this House a proposal. It is not law, it has not been passed. But what you're doing is accusing him of constitutional vulgarity and of before the House.
Yes, I'm answering his arguments.
Consideration.
In fact, he's abusing it.
Legally insane.
He's abusing it.
Legally insane.
You have to cover this law.
Sir, I have also a report from Trinidad and Tobago, because this issue arose in Trinidad and Tobago in the year 2000. The then Attorney General of Trinidad and Tobago and the Chief Justice had some public exchanges, as a result of which the President of Trinidad and Tobago commissioned an inquiry into the judiciary and appointed Lord Mackay of Clashford as the former Lord Chancellor of England, distinguished gentleman, Justice Austin Amisa and Dr. L.M. Singhi, and they inquired into various matters concerning the judiciary. And this is what they had to say when it came to the question of finance and the judiciary. I quote from the report, sir, at page 45. The funds required for the judiciary are thus the responsibility of Parliament, and decisions about funding require the executive government to lay budget before Parliament for approval. The executive government must lay. The precise form of the budget is a matter for the executive to consider in proposing and for Parliament to approve it. That is what Lord Mackay is saying. Lord Chancellor of England. Mr. Nagamoto seemed to be brighter than Lord Mackay. The Trinidad Constitution, sir, is identical to the Guyana Constitution. The identical structures exist. So, sir, the arguments that Mr. Greenidge has made and the accusations which he has leveled against his government that we are violating the Constitution, that we are violating the rule of law. I have cited several sources. The court ruling in Guyana, your Honor ruling, from the Lord Chancellor of England, all of which cumulatively vindicate the government's position. So, to conclude that aspect of my presentation, I humbly submit that the arguments of Mr. Greenidge are frivolous, vexatious, wholly misconceived, and absolutely wrong. Mr. Speaker, I now turn to some aspects of the legal sector of our country. Sir, I'm being disturbed continuously. Sir, I seek the aid of your protection.
You're entitled to it, but you're also entitled to give it. As a player, you are very good at making comments exactly as they speak. So it's part of the common trust. But you have it. Because I did.
And if you need mine, sir, I'll give it to you. Sir, I now move to my sectoral responsibility. Mr. Speaker, our responsibility of the Ministry of Legal Affairs is the oversight and management of Guyana's transport, land registration, and business registration systems and institutions. In 2012, our energy has been dedicated to much planning and reform in the law and institutions governing our system of transports, land registration, and business registration. In 2011, the business conducted at just one of those institutions, the deeds registry, numbered in excess of 40,000 transactions and included the registration and recordings of 11,168 bills of sale, 228 new companies, 5,125 business names, 674 trademarks, 1,813 powers of attorney, and 1,650 deeds, and 11,094 conveyances, and that excludes the conveyancing done through the Ministry of Housing. Every single one of these transactions was urgent and life-changing to the citizen using the process. Unfortunately, our laws and institutions, as currently constituted, were firstly unable to give the stakeholders the expedient service they deserve. Secondly, are unable to keep pace with the increase in commercial transactions in Guyana. And thirdly, unable to perform at the speed at which business arrangements are required to be made in the increasingly competitive world. To meet the demands of the stakeholders, the increase in commercial transactions, and the efficiency and speed with which the commercial transactions are required to be processed, we have embarked on a series of sweeping legal and institutional reforms in the following areas: the deeds registry, the companies registry, the land registry, the business names process, and the official gazette notice process. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware that in 2012 we drafted and piloted and collectively passed, and I extend my gratitude to the other side on this occasion, for giving me full support when I brought the Gazette bill to the National Assembly. The distinguished member of the opposition, distinguished members of the opposition, both sides, both AFC. Mr. Speaker, that bill was indeed an important aspect of our legal system, because as I explained then, the official gazette remained as part of our legal landscape for almost 300 years, but in a very haphazard way. That bill has put it on a firm footing, but more fundamentally, it has allowed access via the internet to thousands of Guyanese, both in and out of Guyana. Mr. Speaker, it was formally launched, the official gazette online that is, in February 2013, and so far we have had over 25,000 hits. Every Friday, Mr. Speaker, every Friday at about 3:30 p.m., you can go on your computer and log on to the official gazette available for that week. So efficient. And so far, sir, just one weekend we have missed, and it was a Good Friday weekend.
Remember your time will elapsed.
Mr. Speaker, I propose that the Honorable Minister be given 15 minutes to continue his presentation.
If he sticks to script,
Mr. Speaker, the business name registry. And Mr. Speaker, we also, in July 2012, finally was able to appoint a qualified attorney at law to act in the position of Registrar of Deeds. This is after a 30 years lapse. That person is in office and from all indications is functioning commendably. Mr. Speaker, the land registry is also scheduled for similar transformational reformation. Mr. Speaker, like the deeds registry, the land registry has sub-registries in Berbice and Essequibo, and the main registry is in Georgetown. The land registry in its current state is indeed inadequate in terms of human resource personnel as well as technical and other resources to cope with the workload that it is presented with. And we have a bill already drafted in similar terms like the land, like the deed, the deeds registry, in which we will again appoint a board, and we will similarly constitute that board, and the administration of that unit will be run by that board. But importantly, we are going to resource that unit. We are going to physically remove it from both of its locations in Georgetown as well as in Berbice. In Berbice, sir, for example, it is occupying very cramped conditions below the High Court of New Amsterdam, sharing facilities with the deeds registry, facilities that are wholly inadequate. And we are going to remove them and put that entity in a new and separate location. The same will be done for the Georgetown location. It is currently located at Durban Backlands, and we are going to remove it and locate it at the former New Building Society building. That building will also accommodate the commercial registry, which will be physically disengaged from the deeds registry. All of these things, Mr. Speaker, are intended to bring greater speed and efficiency to the people of our country. Mr. Speaker, in relation to the judiciary, I would like to say, Mr. Speaker, that I ask my friends on the other side, especially my learned friends, to understand the limitations that the executive operates under in relation to the judiciary. The judiciary, as members would know, is a constitutionally independent body, and all that the executive can do is to present available resources, but the judiciary is largely self-regulatory. So to my learned friend, Mr. Bond, the question that he asked about the appointment of the registrar or the non-appointment of the registrar and the promotion of people within that structure, he must know that those appointments reside with the Judicial Service Commission, an independent constitutional body that has no functional connection with the executive. And therefore, to create the impression that the executive is responsible for appointments made there is completely and wholly wrong. Mr. Speaker, my learned friend Mr. Williams spoke about there is a concentration of investments in infrastructure in the justice sector. And that is indeed correct, sir. That is indeed correct. But we are not singular in our emphasis. We are developing infrastructure as well as every conceivable area that falls under the administration of justice. Our program, Mr. Speaker, the Justice Improvement Administration Program, is now coming to an end. Mr. Speaker, the program has been the agenda of the Legal Affairs Ministry over the last 3 years, and it is now winding up. I agree with my friends that that program was never intended. It was never intended to address all the problems of the legal sector. But what I can say emphatically, that it has addressed a tremendous and a substantial number of problems. Mr. Speaker, the backlog cases alone, I am proud to report that significant dents have been made in the backlog. 12,201 cases were assigned to judges of the High Court between March 2012 and December 2012. And 8,880 cases were disposed of. That is a remarkable achievement, Mr. Speaker, in adverse circumstances. And it makes the judiciary ready for the promulgation of the new High Court rules. That again is a responsibility of the judiciary itself, an organ called the Rules Committee, presided over by the Chancellor. But I have received the commitment that by July of this year, those new rules are going to be promulgated. And the reason advanced for the delay was the necessity, in the opinion of the judiciary, to address the serious backlog of cases first. So as far as possible, when the new rules are promulgated, the playing field would have been leveler than it would have been before. The Georgetown Magistrates Court, Mr. Speaker, will be completed finally this year. My friend lamented about the lack of air conditioning facilities, and I want to report that that building has been extended from the original contract. There has been a variation, hence the delay. Variation in two respects. 2 additional courts have been added to the structure, bringing the total number of courts to be accommodated in that building to 10. And each court will be air conditioned. Each court will be air conditioned. My friend, Mr. Bond, spoke about the automated recording system to be implemented. And I wish to assure this House that in the final stages of the Justice Improvement Program, that is scheduled to be addressed. We are going to do a pilot project first at the Court of Appeal, and the Chief Justice's Court, and in the Commercial Court. We are going to utilize the services of the Parliament for guidance and training, the Hansard Division. And of course, we are in the process of acquiring the equipment. And once that is done and the pilot is successful, the intention is to translate or rather replicate that in every single court in our country. Mr. Speaker, the law books are finally going to be made available. I am told by the consultant by July of this year. They are on the printery and they will look like this. We have also courts earlier this year. We have 4 from 1975 to 2007. This is the hard copy. And then of course the soft copy, we have them online from 1936 to 2007. Also, Mr. Speaker, we have spoken to the publishers. And we are going to annually, it is not going to be this marathon break anymore in the process. We are going to ensure that every year the law reports are going to be updated in a timely manner. Hence, they are sold at a particular price. The intention is for the project to be economically viable. The same kind of suggestion Mr. Nagamoto advancing for the Demerara Harbor Bridge. Mr. Speaker, we have upgraded, of course, libraries at the DPP chambers and at the AG chambers. The DPP office has been fully and completely renovated, and now the DPP is there, and there are accommodation there, Mr. Speaker, to accommodate 16 lawyers. Mr. Speaker, we are opening, the contract has been awarded already for the construction to begin of a building at New Amsterdam, Main and King Street. That building, Mr. Speaker, will house the DPP office for the first time in Region 6. And of course it will deal with the issues arising in relation to that office in respect of Region 5. Mr. Speaker, Essequibo will have their own shortly. Have no doubt about that. Mr. Speaker, under the program, we have established a civil and criminal committee, justice committee, in all 3 counties, Berbice, Essequibo, and Demerara. A secretariat is housed in the Court of Appeal. The appointment of members of the committee were done during December 2012. And it enabled training of these persons during the month of January 2012 by a firm that helped design these mechanisms. This is a monitoring unit comprised of various stakeholders and members of the public. The intention is to scrutinize and oversight the functions of the judiciary. Of course, Mr. Speaker, we have the paralegal system in the rural community. That is intended to supplement our legal access to justice, because in the interior, Mr. Speaker, it is difficult to locate courts at every point where there is an accumulation of population. And therefore, we are dealing with that. We are creating a system that trains people in the interior to preside over the resolution of disputes. My friend is asking about the lay magistrate. I have asked the same thing. The decision to implement that lies with the Chancellor of the Judiciary, not the Executive. As an attorney at law, I suggest that you ask him. Mr. Speaker, there are wide-ranging reforms. There are wide-ranging reforms that are taking place in the justice sector. But, Mr. Speaker, a lot has to be done. A lot more has to be done. In terms of modernizing our laws, in terms of modernizing infrastructure, in terms of modernizing systems, in terms of digitizing our systems, in terms of injecting technological advances in our systems, are all initiatives that we have to pursue. It will take time, and it will require the support of everyone. It will require the support for Budget 2030 for it to be for it to take place. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, all members. The Minister having completed, we will take the suspension of 1 hour. In return, we will be addressed by Mr. Cameron Hamilton. All members wanted, and we had proposed to hold the business subcommittee meeting at the recess, but both sides of the House were to have presented drafted proposals for the estimates. I have not seen them, and have they been exchanged between the two sides? So I'm suggesting that we hold a meeting at the second suspension. And if the proposals are finished, that they be shared, because to go in the meeting and be a while. But I will be advised during the break what is the proposal. That's my proposal. Thank you very much.